So, what happens when an agent of pure individual will just crashes into a universe that's run by destiny? When a true force of nature meets this intricate web of fate, does the web just snap, or does the force get all tangled up? It's that classic question, right? The unstoppable force versus the immovable object. Well, we're about to dive into one of the most incredible ontological collisions ever recorded.
And you've got to hear how the subject of our analysis, Son Goku, put it. This is how he described his first few moments in the Star Wars galaxy. And it's just a brilliant way to frame it, isn't it? He didn't just feel weaker. He felt like the very physics of his new reality were pushing back, like there was this systemic drag on his actual biology. So this isn't about power levels. This is about the fundamental rules of existence getting a complete rewrite.
And that idea, well, it brings us to the core concept for this whole explainer: ontological friction. The best way to think about it is this. This isn't just about two characters having a fight. It's about two different universal laws of reality clashing head-on. You've got the external, almost deterministic force on one side, and on the other, you have the internal, purely biological power of Kai. That mismatch, that's the engine that drives this entire story.
So here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with that initial ontological collision, then look at how it completely rewrote the rules of war. From there, we'll get into something called the empathy fissure, how to deconstruct a bully on a galactic scale, what turned into a moral referendum for the galaxy, and finally, we'll wrap up with the outsider's lasting legacy.
All right, let's kick things off with the fundamental conflict. This is really where it all begins. And we're not talking about lightsabers versus energy blasts here. No, this is much deeper. This is about the source code of two completely different universes.
This chart really gets right to the heart of it. On one side, you have the Force, this external, cosmic web that kind of dictates fate. But Ki, on the other hand, is completely internal. It's a person's literal life force, a product of their own body. So while the Force needs a spiritual connection, Ki is all physiological. It even reacts to things like the radiation from a star. They are, at their core, fundamentally opposite systems.
And that difference wasn't just theoretical. It had an immediate, quantifiable effect. The second Goku arrived on Tatooine, his Saiyan physiology, which had evolved under a totally different kind of star, was suddenly hit with an 85% performance cap. That's right, the unique radiation from those twin suns basically acted like a biological dampener, which is exactly why he felt like he was wearing weighted clothing woven into reality.
So the big question is, how does a biological handicap like that end up sparking a tactical revolution? Well, let's jump into our next section and see how Goku's abilities just completely shattered the Empire's entire military doctrine.
You have to remember, the Empire's power was all about logistics. With that massive fleet of star destroyers and their interdictors creating gravity wells, they could control all the hyperspace lanes. They could blockade entire systems in the blink of an eye. Their biggest strength was their ability to manage the vast empty distances between the stars.
And that's the disruption. Just like that, Goku introduced a capability that took the Empire's single greatest strategic advantage, its total control over distance, and made it completely and utterly irrelevant. He didn't need hyperspace lanes. He didn't need a starship. All he needed was a destination.
I mean, just look at the tactical difference here. Imperial logistics, they need calculated routes, right? And those can be blocked by gravity wells. Instant transmission, on the other hand, just locks onto a life signature. And here's the kicker. There are no known countermeasures. This one ability, all by itself, shifted the entire conflict from a war of distance and blockades to a war of immediate, overwhelming presence.
And it just keeps building from there. Goku didn't just disrupt physical warfare. His abilities created a crack, a fissure, in the galaxy's entire metaphysical and psychological landscape. He basically introduced a brand new way of seeing people.
Okay, so this is the crucial point. The Jedi and the Sith, they see the universe through this binary filter of the Force. Light side, dark side. That's it. To them, Darth Vader was pure, monolithic evil. But Goku, well, he doesn't perceive the universe that way at all. He senses Ki, the literal life force of a person. So he didn't see a Dark Lord of the Sith, he sensed the fractured, pained, and traumatized energy signature of a man named Anakin Skywalker.
And with that one single empathetic observation, he completely bypassed decades of brutal Sith conditioning. See, he didn't talk to the monster. He spoke directly to the man who was trapped inside. He addressed the trauma, not the ideology. And that was a kind of intelligence the Sith had absolutely no defense against.
And this is what the source material refers to as empathy as a tactical fissure. It's this idea that empathy isn't just some moral virtue, it's a strategic tool. By seeing Vader as a psychological casualty instead of some cosmic inevitability, Goku created a crack in the Sith's most formidable weapon, Vader himself.
Now, this ability to see the core truth of a person, it didn't just stop with Vader. It scaled up to the entire galactic conflict. So let's take a look at how Goku's simple, almost childlike worldview just completely dismantled the Empire's entire ideological structure.
Goku, without even trying, applied what analysts now call the bully doctrine. He just ignored all the complex political justifications, the massive bureaucracies, all the talk about order and stability. He saw the conflict for exactly what it was, a big, powerful bully hurting people who couldn't fight back. It was really as simple as that.
And that is precisely why it was so devastatingly effective. See, the Empire's power wasn't just in its Star Destroyers. It was in its psychological weight, its mythological legitimacy. It presented itself as this inevitable, unstoppable historical force. But the moment you reframe the Emperor as nothing more than a common bully, well, that entire psychological house of cards comes tumbling down, and hope suddenly becomes possible again.
Which brings us to the final confrontation. And this wasn't just a fight for the fate of the galaxy. Oh no. This was a battle between two fundamentally opposed philosophies of how you even gather power in the first place.
The contrast between their ultimate weapons, it says everything. On one side, you've got Emperor Palpatine's Force Storm, which works by taking. It forcibly extracts power from a world just to tear reality itself apart. But on the other side, you've got Goku's Spirit Bomb, which works by asking. It requests permission from all living things to share a piece of their energy. It's coercion versus consensus.
The mechanics of the technique itself just prove the point. Step 1 is simply asking. Step 2 is gathering willing contributions. The final weapon is literally a manifestation of collective consensual will. In the end, the Sith's entire philosophy of taking just could not stand up against the unified power of billions asking for freedom. It was a moral referendum, cast with life energy.
So after all the dust settled, what was left? What was the permanent legacy of this so-called Saiyan anomaly? Let's break down the final takeaways.
The strategic shifts were absolutely permanent. On a purely military level, instant transmission made naval blockades a thing of the past. On a psychological level, sensing Ki provided a brand new blueprint for de-radicalization. You target the trauma, not the ideology. And maybe most importantly, on a philosophical level, Goku's very existence proved that the dark side was never an inevitable fate. It was a choice, and a choice that could always be unmade.
And that brings us right back to where we started. What happens when an agent of pure will collides with a web of destiny? Well, the answer seems pretty clear. The web breaks. Goku's journey proved that even in a galaxy that seems to be governed by ancient prophecies and cosmic forces, the most powerful energy in the universe is, and will always be, a single conscious choice to do the right thing.